Full-size trucks are getting super massive and super expensive, so it's great to see a resurgence in mid-size trucks. Mid-size trucks are plenty capable.
Yeah.
They can tow, they can go off-road, they can have a ton of benefits that you may not realize in contrast to where like light-duty full-size trucks are at now.
Absolutely.
And they're a lot cheaper.
Oh yeah.
We've put every mid-size truck on the market through our rigorous, standardized testing process and have done plenty of truck-specific tests as well. We've commuted with them, we've driven long distances, we've towed, we've gone off-road, even with the trucks that aren't necessarily optimized for it. So this ranking list covers all the trucks that you will find at dealer lots currently, and you can find more details about our ratings and rankings process at Edmunds.com. Our number one ranked mid-size truck is the Honda Ridgeline. So we just lost all our credibility, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So we understand how this looks to truck dudes, quote unquote, but why do we like it so much?
Because, you know, when it comes right down to it, if you're really coldly logical about it, off-road performance isn't something that very many people actually need. And if you just look at, you know, how nice it is to drive every day, the bed, the cargo options, the Ridgeline's bed is amazing with a trunk that's lockable. You can put stuff in there and it could be raining outside and it won't care.
It's a pretty sizable bed. You can fit 4x8 sheets in there.
It's the only one where they will lay flat on the deck because the wheel wells are far enough apart. And it's a composite bed, so you don't need a bed liner. The tailgate opens two ways, and that's the bed. And it's even a longer bed than any of the other crew cabs have, you know, the crew cab short bag configuration. It's a little bit longer than those.
Also, you can reach into the bed
easily
without needing a stool.
Yep. And then when you get in the cab, the rear seat is huge, and 4 of me will fit in the cab. I'm 6'2".
You've got the trunk underneath the bed is great. Interior storage is great as well.
Yep.
And this thing is just a nice truck to drive around town.
Yeah, and it's the only one that has independent suspension in the rear. And that really smooths out the ride. I mean, the tow rating is only 5,000 pounds with the all-wheel drive version, which isn't terribly high compared to the others. But, you know, for my mind, in a mid-sized truck, if you're towing a lot more than 5,000 pounds anyway, a full-size truck might be a better choice.
But it also brings the benefits on like washboard roads.
Yeah, this thing really excels because with an independent suspension, you don't have very much unsprung mass. And so what that means is it rides smoother, but it also puts less stress on the components.
Yeah, we're talking
like the shock absorbers.
We're talking specifically about a test we did
Yeah.
with the Nissan Titan XD Pro 4X and the Toyota Tacoma TRD off-road 4x4, where we drove them quite a distance on washboard road.
Yeah, we went to a place called the Racetrack in Death Valley, and it's 27 miles of washboard in, U-turn, 27 miles of washboard out. And the point of the test was to see if the Ridgeline would fall on its knees. And the other trucks were just there to support. And it turned out that the Ridgeline outdid the other two trucks.
Well, not just outdid, like the Titan and the Tacoma blew up their rear shocks. And when we say blew up, like they actually melted.
Yeah,
like there was smoke.
All the oil came out, there was smoke. The yellow shocks look like burnt French fries.
If you're serious about off-roading, if you're serious about towing, this is definitely not the truck for you. But if you're realistic about your needs, this is a really solid, well-executed truck.
It's a solid truck.
So our number 2 ranked midsize truck is the Jeep Gladiator.
Yeah.
And if the Ridgeline is
more
here, the Gladiator is like over there somewhere in terms
a different
of
county.
It's quite different, the Gladiator, but we like the Gladiator a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got personality by the train load. I mean, it really is like a Wrangler with a bed that's very functional.
Yeah.
It's not just a glued on little shorty that doesn't do anything. It's as big as the other beds out there.
Yeah.
And it has a payload and tow rating to match that really makes it a useful truck. But when you look at the cab part, you know, it's got the doors that come off, the roof that comes off. It's the only
windshield
convertible.
flips down,
Windshield
right?
flips down. The back seat has the second most leg room after the Ridgeline as far as passenger comfort, and the seat flips and folds in nice ways so you can store stuff.
Yeah.
And the bed,
it's pretty low, right?
It's pretty. The sides aren't very tall, so it's actually really nice because you can reach in and grab a motorcycle tie-down strap, give it a cinch.
It actually has some advantages over the Wrangler too. Like it rides better.
Oh yeah, because it's got the same solid axle front suspension that a Wrangler has, and recirculating ball steering, all that. But in the back, it's got the same suspension, or nearly the same, as the Ram 1500, and that's a truck that we really like because because it rides so much nicer than trucks that have leaf springs. And the same is true here.
The Gladiator is a Jeep, so you expect some off-road capability.
Unquestionably, and you won't be disappointed. I mean, the approach angle is insane. It's got a pretty good departure angle despite the bed hanging off the back, but it does have one problem.
It's really long.
It's really long,
really
and it's
long truck.
It's the wheelbase that's the issue, because the wheelbase is almost a foot longer than the other trucks. And that really gets you, maybe hung up on some rocks. But you can solve that, because in the Jeep world, aftermarket parts and lift kits are just like almost a requirement. People will spend a ton on their Jeep, and then they'll spend a ton more on accessories.
That's the downside. You already pay a lot for a Gladiator Rubicon, and then to think that you have to pay more to lift it and put on bigger tires and stuff.
And you don't have to do that unless you want to go off-road or look like you go off-road.
So it has some small downsides, but if you're looking for like unparalleled character, strong towing, and really strong off-road capability, the Gladiator is the solution.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great truck.
Yeah. If the Honda's over here, and the Jeep's over here, the Toyota Tacoma
right down the middle
bridges the gap, right? And it's really strong. It's really good, especially for 2020.
Tacoma's always really been the most well-rounded choice.
Yeah.
It's great as a truck. It's got attitude. It's really good off-road, surprisingly good. And it's reliable, and people love it.
What brought it down last year up to 2019 was basically where the driver would sit, and the lack of adjustability in the seat and the steering wheel, and also the in-car entertainment, infotainment, whatever you want to call it, was poor by industry standards.
Exactly. The Tacoma has always been designed with off-road in mind, and so the frame's kind of high, so it has better clearance, but that means getting into the cab is a little bit more of a step up, and that also led to a kind of a legs-out driving position that some people didn't like. This year, though, they've added a power driver's seat. This truck's now comfortable to sit in a lot more than it has been in the past.
And with regard to entertainment, you now have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto support.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, absolutely. And this just is very transformative, because it's a nicer screen, easier to use, the map graphics are better, and like you say, the smartphones, boom, they're in there. The Ridgeline has a tailgate and a trunk, but the bed in the Tacoma, it's got everything it needs and nothing it doesn't. It's a composite bed, so you don't need a bed liner. It's got hooks in the corners, but also sliding rails with cleats that you can move. You can get a power outlet back there. There's a couple of little cubbies. It's the best bed out there. It's not very tall either, so it's easy to reach in. It's kind of like pretty nicely packaged.
And you get a nice range of models to choose from too, from standard Tacomas all the way up to the TRD Pros of the world, and everything in between.
Yeah, and the one in between that I like the most is the TRD Off-Road. It's kind of got everything you need, and the price isn't that high. And if you want to like build an off-roader, that's the one to start with, and then you can put your bigger tires or whatever on that one.
The few downsides it has, one, powertrain.
The V6 doesn't have as much torque as I'd like, but again, in 2020, they've helped themselves by recalibrating the transmission so it shifts differently, and that really has kind of smoothed over some of the problems. But the same powertrain that's kind of lackluster on the pavement has really good off-road. The throttle control is stellar.
Yeah, this is a great truck for anybody. And
easy
recommendation.
You've got an off-road lifestyle. If you want to work, you can do both of those things.
Yeah, the Colorado likewise is a solid all-round truck, which we should point out is a 10th behind the Tacoma in our ranking scale.
Right, and it was ahead of the Tacoma until the Tacoma made these changes for 2020.
What are its shortcomings versus the Tacoma? Its
bed has kind of got really comically tall sides.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's great, but loading and unloading isn't really that easy. It's just kind of a styling thing, and it doesn't really help with the functionality.
It looks cool, but it is kind of more difficult to use on a day-to-day basis.
And then the other thing is it's kind of just a shrunken full-size truck, and by that I mean it's not really taking advantage of its smaller dimensions to except beyond parking. You know, the Tacoma, as I mentioned, was kind of got off-road as a design principle. You can see that it's not such with the Colorado. If you look at the rear axle, the shocks are kind of...
They're pretty centered, right?
They're in the middle where they're kind of vulnerable. And
the Tacoma, they're way more outboard.
Yeah, exactly.
We like the availability of the ZR2, which is the very cool looking off-road version of the Colorado. We have one in our long-term fleet. It's a really nice truck to drive around town.
But when you get off-road, the powertrain isn't quite as easy to control at low speeds and low range. And those trick shocks don't feel as well tuned on like a washboard dirt road. You know, it seems like it's really good as a street truck, and it looks like an off-road truck, and it works off-road. Let's face it, it's got a front and rear locker.
But we generally like the truck on the road. And when we did our 3-truck comparison with the Ranger, Tacoma, and Colorado, we preferred the Colorado on-road and the Tacoma off-road. That was kind of the distinction there.
Yeah, and really that's where you're going to spend most of your time if you're an average person. So that's why the ratings are so close together.
So close. The other downside of the Colorado is just the interior look and feel. It's a small thing to complain about, but the plastics just don't have that feeling of quality.
But for me, the back seat is also an issue. It's got space, about like Tacoma, maybe a little smidge more. But when you fold the seats, it's not totally flat, and it's higher off the ground. So, you know, it's not as good for like putting something in there.
We should also highlight too, along with a turbo diesel, which you can't get in any other truck in this segment, you can also get a integrated trailer brake controller, which is not available in any other truck in this segment so far. Because we know that one's coming to the Gladiator, but it's not available yet.
And the diesel's great. It really has the torque that you want in a truck, and the fuel economy is outstanding. And we've been able to actually meet the EPA rating on that.
You know, the Colorado doesn't excel in any single category, but it is a solid all-around truck. And we wouldn't, you know, think less of you if you bought one over at Tacoma.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Number 5 is the GMC Canyon, which has the same score as the Colorado, unsurprisingly, because it's the same truck. So why get a Canyon?
It's a little bit nicer looking, and it feels a little more upscale. And also you can get a Denali. You can't get a ZR2, but you can get a Denali, which is the high-end model.
Everything we've said about the Colorado applies to the Canyon, excluding the ZR2.
Exactly.
And so let's move on to number 6.
Okay.
As a former Ford Ranger owner, it landing in number 6 hurts. It's fair to say that we had some disappointments with this truck.
Yeah, but not everything. A 2.3 liter turbo,
start with the good.
10-speed automatic, they're stellar. And you know, the fuel economy rating is good.
That engine,
it's got a lot of power, it's got a good tow rating, payload, all those kinds of like truck specs are right where they need to be.
We like the drivetrain a lot. We like the touchscreen interface.
It's time for a refresh, but it does work well.
It's quick,
I'd like to see a couple of shortcut buttons. Everything has to happen on the touchscreen.
That is the downside.
That feels a couple of years old. But
let's talk downsides.
When we did our comparison test, nobody really wanted to ride in it very long because they started to get queasy. And we had the FX4, which should have had better dampers. It just doesn't feel settled down.
Yeah, that is a real big turnoff for people who are sensitive to motion sickness like myself.
The bed has the same issues that the Colorado has. It's big, but it's got really tall sides, and the tailgate's high when you open it. It doesn't have any of the features that the Ridgeline or the Tacoma or even the Gladiator has a couple that are missing here. Everything's an accessory. This truck doesn't have a split rear seat. Everybody else does. This is not a 60-40 or a 50-50. It's a 100-0. It's just one piece, and it only folds about that far down, so you can't even make a loading platform out of it.
And that may be due to the fact that, you know, though the Ranger is new to the U.S., it's been for sale worldwide for a long time.
Yeah, it's been in Thailand and Australia for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. It's an update with a new motor for us.
Yeah, and a good one at that. And lastly, off-road, we had some trouble with it during our 3-truck test that we did earlier this year.
It doesn't have the suspension articulation of the Tacoma, certainly, but also even the Chevrolet.
So overall, I mean, there are some decent attributes in the Ranger.
Yeah,
but I think it's safe to say we just expected more from it in comparison to some of the other trucks that you can get for the same money.
Yeah, it's new to us, but it doesn't feel new.
Yeah. Nissan Frontier ranked last in our rankings, but the score is tied with the Ranger, I'll point out, because the Frontier still has some attributes. This is an old truck. In your words, you said it survived 3 presidential administrations.
That's right.
If this were a human, it'd be legally able to drive.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty much.
This generation was on sale when the last generation of the Ford Ranger left the market.
And then went into exile.
Yes.
And then came back.
And it's the same Frontier.
I know. Well, you know, there's an advantage there, although we're digging to find it.
Yeah.
And that is they've paid for the tooling like I don't know how many times over. So the price is low.
Yeah,
it's
the
a
price
pretty
is
good
very low.
value.
Yeah, that's the Frontier's biggest advantage is
Yeah.
they're fairly inexpensive. And let's face it, it does what you would expect from a truck from that time.
But it also has an old engine and transmission setup, 4-liter V6.
And a 5-speed automatic.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, it's what half the Ford has.
Yeah, exactly. So half the gears and almost twice the displacement.
Yeah.
And it uses a lot of fuel. It's the least fuel efficient truck here. But you're saving so much on the purchase price that maybe that's not a big deal.
And we don't factor this into our ranking process significantly, but it does have some charm, right? Just kind of being old school, old tech. That's just an old truck.
Yeah, driving around the
Yeah.
manual is kind of fun.
Yeah. That concludes our rankings of mid-size trucks, all of them. Check with Edmunds.com for the latest info and updates. We're continually updating these rankings and ratings in real time, so all changes will be reflected there. Try this again next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe there'll be a new Frontier by then.